again, Peter from FSBushcraft. Just sitting here in the cabin and relaxing. Actually, just getting ready, packing up. Sunday, getting ready to head home. But wanted to shoot a little video. Wayne, Kullcraven Bushcraft, is doing an amazing series, I think, right now about wild encounters. Now, as I said to Wayne, unfortunately, I've never really had any major encounters that much, but I have two that I remember the most out of my childhood. And the first one, so I'm going to record the same thing. I'm going to record both of them separately, but for the first one, I'm going to think back to about, oh gosh, I was probably only about 11 or 12 years old, and my father used to be the Cub and Scout leader at our local church where I grew up in St. John. And he had us one time, we were out at this lake called Love Lake. It's like 18 miles in the middle of the bush, way out in the middle of no man's land. And we were out there and turned around and doing up shelters and kind of learning how to make like lean-tos and stuff like that. Well, this one night we were sitting there and we had the fire going in the middle, and we had like the whole Cub and Scout troop. We were all there together, and we had the lean-tos all built, and they were all kind of around, surrounding kind of the fire in the middle. And you know, as kids, we're all sitting in our shelters and thought they were cool and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, you could hear way off in the distance, you could hear the howling and stuff like that of these coyotes that had gone on. And as time went on, a little bit longer, you could hear they started getting closer and closer and closer and closer, to the point that it almost sounded like they were right in our camp. And then all of a sudden, lo and behold, you could get up, and I noticed that my father and two of his buddies that he had with him, with us being out there, that turned out and helped him with the troop and stuff, are standing around the fire, and they're all kind of looking, and you kind of look out, and all you could see was like these red glowing eyes off in the distance out through the woods. Well, this coyote pack had turned out and actually come right into our camp, basically, and I would say, you know, the following morning we could turn on and tell there were probably not more than, oh gosh, probably like 15, 20 feet. Some of them had turned on and come right in. So they were almost right at the back end of our lean-tos. And, you know, you could hear them like walking around, and you could hear the growling going on and the whole bit. And I think the big thing for us back then, as my father explained to us, was that because of the fire, and we had a half-decent fire that was going, it kind of kept them at bay. But it showed that being that far out in the bush, those coyotes weren't timid. They weren't scared. You know, they were bound and determined they were going to come in, and they were seeing what was going on. And of course, they could smell the food and stuff like that we had. So it came to the point where my father basically, you know, he started yelling at his buddies and that, and they started yelling at them and the whole bit, and you know, trying to get them to leave. And they kind of backed off, and it was probably about an hour and a half later, that same pack ended up coming back in again. And this time you could hear the growling was a lot louder, and, you know, going on in the whole bit. And, you know, they wanted to come in. And the only thing, at the last minute, my father, being an ex-cop, basically always turned around and carried a firearm with him. And he had a .45 caliber pistol that he had brought out with him. And basically turned around and up towards the air and blasted a shot out of that thing. And I laughed today, but it was scary back then. But I laughed today. All you could hear was kind of like, rrr, rrr, rrr. You could hear them yelping and taking off, because, you know, just the blast of the pistol firing off, they took off. But they didn't come back in again that night, but you could hear them way off in the distance, howling and going on all night long, and wouldn't give it up. Now, mind you, most of us never got much sleep that night, the kids, but it just goes to show, you know, when you're out in the deep bush especially, the predatory animals, there's not a whole lot really that will scare them off. Like you know, they'll test the limits really well. But that was kind of my first experience. you know, it might not sound too extravagant, but for me, like I say, back then, being as young as I was, and it was my first experience with coyotes, it was scary. But, you know, thank God that we had the fire going. And thank God my father turned around and had a pistol with him. Like I say, unfortunately, here in Canada, you know, we don't have the same, you know, the Second Amendment like my friends in the States. You know, we can't always turn around and carry a firearm with us all the time out in the bush and have that extra protection. But in that case, like I say, my father, you know, being an off-duty police officer, you know, had a firearm with him that he could turn around and carry. And thank God he did, because I think if it wasn't for that, there would have been some action going on that night. For sure, they would have come in. But anyway, that's kind of my first story for Wayne's, for Kullcraven Bushcraft, for his kind of wild encounters. And like I say, next time, here in a short time, I'll do another one. I've got another one that's kind of not the same idea as a scary, but scary for me being young, and deals with a moose that was in rut. So anyway, stay tuned. And once again, Wayne, I think it's a great series, brother. I look forward to hearing more stories from everybody else. And we'll see you in the next one. God bless.